The deaths of 3 children in Pender County in 2017, all investigated as homicides, all tonight are still unsolved. WECT did not know about 2 of those cases until the release of this year's Child Fatality Prevention Report. Investigative reporter Ann McAdams has looked into all 3 of those investigations. Now, Ann, at this point, we've learned the cases are not related, correct?
That's right, John. We found out about the death of 5-year-old Peyton Fields right after it happened, but 2 other young children also died in 2017, and part of the delay solving their cases appears to be the lengthy turnaround time getting their autopsy reports. In 2017, 1-year-old Leighton Fisher took a fatal fall and hit her head by the pool. She was discovered by her babysitter. The exact reasons why remain unclear, but 3 years later, this case is still being looked at as a homicide. 2-year-old Keith Stevens also died in 2017, suffering a lacerated liver from blunt force trauma. His death prompted a homicide investigation that also remains unsolved. In both of these cases, the medical examiner did not return the autopsy reports for almost 2 years. District Attorney Ben David said such long delays determining cause of death can make the criminal investigation more difficult.
It's when there's an investigative need and the results might change how you're looking at the death from accidental to intentional, that we obviously want to know those things right away.
So what took so long? We don't have a clear answer, but the DA says it is problematic that the state does not have a forensic medical examiner stationed here.
There are no local autopsies in New Hanover, Pender, Brunswick, Bladen, or Columbus, and there never have been in the 20 years I've been a prosecutor. And so that obviously it makes it more difficult to know things right away.
There are still no answers and no arrests 3 years after the death of a 2-year-old boy in Pender County. Keith Stevens' death from blunt force trauma is being investigated as a homicide, but most people did not even know the child had died until this year. WECT's Ann McAdams is looking into 3 unsolved homicides involving children in Pender County. Now, Ann, you say that Keith Stevens' father actually reached out to us about it?
John, yes, he cannot understand why investigators have not closed the case. The toddler was in the care of his mother and her boyfriend when he died.
I had to go through the trauma of burying my own child.
For Keith Stevens Sr., the pain of losing his son is palpable. He showed us the T-shirt Keith Jr. was wearing just before he was killed in December 2017.
That's how big he was before they actually beat my son to death.
The case being investigated as a homicide, but 3 years after the fact, it's hard to know if Burgaw police are any closer to solving the crime than they were when Keith died.
And it's been 3 years, and nothing has happened yet. They haven't contacted my family. The DA, they haven't even tried to get an arrest warrant, nothing.
Officials have declined to release details in the case, citing the ongoing investigation. We do know from the autopsy report that Keith Jr. died of blunt force trauma, which lacerated his liver. His mother's boyfriend reported finding him unresponsive on the floor and rushed him to the hospital without a pulse. Medical teams tried for an hour, but were unable to revive him.
I don't care what crime you do in the world, but killing a child, you don't do that. You don't. They need to suffer because my child suffered. And I'm done with waiting, and I'm tired.
Keith Sr. says his son was being mistreated and he was attempting to get full custody of him at the time of his death. We attempted to reach the boy's mother and her boyfriend. They did not answer or return our messages. John, as you know, it is our policy not to identify people who have not been charged or accused of a crime.
All right, WECT's Ann McAdams. Again, any updates on any of those 3 unsolved murders involving young children, I know you'll have it for us. Ann, thanks.
An update in another homicide case. A mother charged with the murder of her 2-year-old son makes her first appearance in court. Quanisha Fennell went before a judge today in Pender County on charges of child abuse and second-degree murder. She's the mother of Keith Stevens Jr., who was killed more than 3 years ago. It's a story the WECT Investigates team has covered extensively. Well, today prosecutors said Fennell admitted to getting angry and throwing the child. She's been given a $750,000 bond. According to Keith Stevens Sr., his son was in her custody at the time of his death. An autopsy revealed the 2-year-old died as a result of blunt force trauma and a lacerated liver.